welcome back. If you haven't seen the introduction to matrix organizations, I would encourage you to start there. That covers some material that we won't be covering here, and it does paint the broad picture of what it means to be a matrix organization, some practical implications of that. Today we're going to focus on some common challenges to matrix organizations, because I do believe that you can't look for a good solution until you have an accurate idea of the specific problem. So we're starting problem focused, and then next week we'll wrap up this mini-series with some recommended solutions. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Let's jump right in. If you saw the introduction, you may remember that matrix organizations have one chain of command, meaning one big boss with a capital B, but some managers under that big boss report to multiple bosses. Consider some examples of having multiple bosses but limited resources. If you're in a government or a civil organization, every agency external to the organic group tends to expect reporting managers to be at their peak every time they meet with them. Now, think about that. Peak mental efficiency, peak physical energy, because we don't just report to the people organic to our traditional chain. We report to people who are external, we are matrix to, or they're matrix to us. They're part of the matrix organization. And if you've got a meeting with somebody about job performance and somebody else, or a meeting with somebody else about funds, and a teleconference with somebody else about personnel, and then you've got to write a very detailed and accurate and comprehensive email about a particular project, as the day goes on, your peak is going to become less and less. So if you're a morning person, the people you talk with or report to in the morning get the best of you. But the people in the afternoon and the early evening, they get much less of you. But those external bosses, and I'm using the word boss loosely, one big boss, capital B, many other bosses we report to external to the organization. Think about the teachers of my children. Think about the government you pay taxes to. Think about the captain of the softball team that you have promised you'll be there every Saturday. All these people are outside of your family, but they're part of the community that you are matrix to, and so you have responsibilities with all of them. And as we go throughout the day, our peak performance becomes less and less. Can be the same throughout the week, depending on how tough the beginning of the week is, right? If you're in a family, every coach tends to expect the parents, who are the first line manager, to support all practices and performances with their kids. So if your kid is involved in choir and softball and music lessons on piano or something else, and they have conflicting schedules, as sometimes coaches do, or Girl Scouts or anything else, all those coaches are only concerned about their individual organization, right? Unless they're really broad-minded and they have been through this themselves with their kids. So that is a challenge of matrix organizations, as others expect us to be at our peak performance regardless of what has happened before, and others expect us to attend all of the events and the supporting events with equal distribution of our time, to be at all of those practices, to be at all of those performances. If you're in a business, every client outside of your organization tends to expect a foreman to dedicate their equipment always to them. Now, if you're in a business, you have limited equipment. You may only have a certain number of forklifts, a certain number of trucks, a certain number of cash registers. But if somebody external to your organization is working with you, they tend to expect you to dedicate that to them, because their business is most important to them. It's just human nature that we are self-focused and want things our way. But every organization has limited time, money, material, people, energy, etc. We don't have an infinite amount of anything to give to anyone. As much as my kids' teachers, as much as businesses outside of when I was growing up in a business, as much as other businesses wanted our complete focus on them, we don't have all mental or physical energy to give to people throughout the day. In the government, although we work with many people external to our individual units, we don't have an infinite amount of equipment to give to everybody all the time. We have to make decisions about who comes first, who comes in second, who comes in third, in terms of peak levels of our energy, in terms of equipment, in terms of creativity or anything else. Because both the appeal and the threat of matrix organization is about the distribution of internal and external power. Now, think about what power is. Power is the ability to get something done, but there's really a couple of subordinate elements under that people who are matrixed outside of our organic group, they're part of us, but they're external to the organic group. They vie for this power, and there's at least two types. Power can be their influence of giving or receiving functions like material, information, etc. If this is my family, or this is my military group, or this is my social group, there are people outside of us, and they have functions, namely material and ideas and information, that can be helpful to my group, my family, or my business, or anything else. They can give it, or they can withhold it. So they have power to influence my mission and yours too. That is one way that they can exercise power over us. The second way they can exercise power is their influence of giving or withholding interest, namely time and authority. Will they pick up the phone? Will they set aside time for a meeting with us? Will they lend their clout, meaning their authority, because they have a reputation in the neighborhood, or they have a title associated with their name, or they have rank or a pay grade that means something in that particular part of society? And in a matrix organization, all of that is distributed among the entire matrix. Not everybody has all of the material. Not everybody has all of the information. Not everybody has equal authority, and we all have a limited amount of time. So we have to allocate that, and so much of a matrix organization is about relationships of trust and understanding and respect, so that we're not competing with each other. We're trying to be synergistic, working with each other, so 1 + 1 = 3, and we're not banging heads, and 1 + 1 = nothing. Distributed power also translates to distributed responsibility and credit. And there are some personalities that will resist sharing responsibility and or credit, and those people will resist matrix organizations. It's human nature. Like I said, some people want to have the credit themselves. If they can patent this, why would they share it with somebody else? If they can publish this paper and get credit for it, if they can show that they've done a good job so somebody would give them an accolade, or they can be proud of themselves. Some of that's self-interested, some of that is altruistic, but it is natural to want to have credit and responsibility for things that we have our hands on, things that we have expertise in, things that are right in front of us, those relationships and those projects. And a lot of that comes from personalities that are pretty hands-on. Hey, this is my stuff. Stay out of my lane. I'm going to make this happen. Thank you for your offer, but no thanks. Very personality-driven sometimes. But there are also managers without training and experience in delegating, and those people will tend to resist matrix organizations. Some people are not so hands-on. When I mean hands-on, I don't necessarily mean tactile or kinesthetic, but wanting to have greater control over their immediate sphere. Other people are open to working with others, but they've not been trained in it, on how to do it. They don't have experience in how to make that successful. They don't know what right looks like. But that's still a challenge to matrix organizations, especially since we have much more history behind us of traditional organizations, and the matrix organization is a newer entity. Another challenge of matrix organizations is a history of traditional authority in the organization. For example, if a group begins to transition from traditional structures, they will resist matrix organization simply because they have known traditional structures in the past. They know where they fit in that. They know how to succeed in that. They know what is expected of them, and the future change is unknown. Even if it's a good change, change is always stressful, and they will tend to resist that. Now, the thing that makes that an even greater challenge is if they have had a history of success with that traditional structure. If things look like they were going really well, they're going to ask, well, if it ain't broke, why are we trying to fix it? Why are we changing? And they may not realize or want to realize that the world around us is changing. And because mom and pop and grandpa don't just have that farm all to themselves. Remember the great-grandfather and grandfather and the parents and the kids. Now the government may have bought out part of their land, or now the agricultural industry around them doesn't need their particular crops as much, and they're having to work with somebody else for their fertilizer or another type of animal husbandry or something else. The world is not as simple as it was. We are more globalized in almost everything we do. So there's a trickle effect, not just in government, not just in societies, but even at the family level. We are matrixed. And even though we've experienced decades of success in traditional authority structures, matrix is more and more the way that we need to go. If subgroups maintain internal traditional structures, they will resist matrix organizations. Now, if you think about a larger organization, a corporation or a large military group or even a large community, there will be pockets of subgroups in that larger organizations. Your personnel shop, one group, a cul-de-sac with 10 families down here, a certain part, a platoon within that brigade of military. If they have been enjoying success in that subgroup and they really like to hold on to it, and they've got managers there that reward that and encourage that, they're going to resist a larger matrix. And lastly, if the senior leaders lack confidence and flexibility, the group will resist matrix organizations. These are at least two attributes that senior leaders, the boss with a capital B, need to have to make a matrix work. Because if they are anxious or angry that they have to share the work with others, there's going to be a trickle effect. Other people will become anxious under them. Other people will become angry under them. If they're not flexible to look at, well, this is what we want, but this is what they need, and this is what they, some constraints or deficits they have, we've got to work with their requirements and their deficits. If they're not flexible to find a way to make that happen, others under them will become more rigid. They'll either become self-protective or they'll become aggressive. But either way, it will be a lose-lose within the organic group and those external to the organic group who are part of the matrix. Hope all that makes sense. Some of these challenges, again, I think we have to start with challenges before we look at working solutions, but that will be the focus of our next and last video in this mini-series, and I hope you'll join us then.